What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the #1 live tuning show in the known universe, InTune with Goat Rope Garage. And we've already got a lot of people queued up, ready to rock and roll. Excited to welcome our guest, Lawrence LT Tolman. You guys know him from Truck Tech on the Power Block, or Power Nation as it was called now. And let's go ahead and get him on here. LT, how is it going, brother? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. We're out here in Utah. We haven't got a lot of snow, but it's chilly and it's windy, and just kind of trying to enjoy life.
Well, we know you got a lot of projects going on. We've been watching a lot of your recent videos on the ugly truck, which is the 8.1 Vortec big block turbocharged just monster. And I haven't gotten around to see what the dyno numbers were that put down. What kind of numbers did you end up putting down on that thing?
Oh man, that's like a top secret question right there. I haven't even finished editing the video yet.
Oh mercy, when's that one coming out?
I'm actually working on it right now. I think probably tomorrow morning. I was supposed to have it up here today. But I spent most of the morning just cleaning up everything because I live down here a little bit south of Salt Lake, and the shop that I used to work at where I go do my dyno stuff, they're up in Idaho Falls, Idaho, which is I think it's like a 220-mile drive. And it was snowing pretty bad yesterday up there, and they spray this, I don't know what it is on the road, but they spray like this liquid ice melting stuff, and it makes a mess out of everything. So I spent all morning, instead of editing like I should have been doing, I spent all morning cleaning up the trucks because I had to do the tow truck, the trailer, and then the ugly truck on top of that. But that being said, I won't spill the numbers just yet, but the dyno session went pretty good. Nothing broke, which I was, a little bit concerned about with the 8.1 because it's, the LS stuff is like, it'll hold 1,000,000 horsepower, an old junkyard motor, they'll last forever. The 8.1 stuff is supposedly pretty weak. It's not like some of the older engines like the Vortec 7.4s.
Right.
Supposedly they were pretty strong. So as we're tuning and as we're tweaking and turning up the boost just a little bit more, you're always kind of a little bit nervous about what's going to go wrong. But we kept things safe on the air fuel. I kept things way rich and way retarded the timing. So it made a lot of torque, I will say that. And
what kind of boost are you running on that thing?
So my wastegate was set at 5 pounds, and that's kind of how I did the street tuning. I just kind of dialed it in. A lot of the videos that people have seen so far of the truck driving on the street was just on 5 pounds. And I just turned it up to 8. So I really didn't want to push it too far. The power number that it made, I'm happy with it. Could we have made more? Definitely. We could have made a lot more with the thing. But for me, I was just like, you know what, let's just call this good. Let's call this safe. Because I do have an event coming up in April, and I didn't really want to torch anything before I at least got some chance to, kind of use the truck and just put some street miles on it and just enjoy it. So,
and you're still running stock bottom end, right?
100% stock. Yeah. It's, I haven't touched the ring gap. Everyone's like, oh, why don't you pull the motor apart and gap the rings? And yeah, that would definitely help on some level, but it's a lot of work, to pull the motor out, pull it apart, gap the rings, and put it back together. And then just to have to turn around and redo the same thing again, because this summer I do want to actually build it, forged pistons, forged rods, maybe a different crankshaft, cam head, basically do a full build. So I'm like, it doesn't really justify the work just for like a what if it might hold a tiny bit more.
Right, exactly. And are you looking at any of the Raylar stuff? I know that they're kind of big in the 8.1 world.
Yeah, I've been looking at a lot of their stuff. They're not the only place to go to, but they make it a lot simpler because you can piece together some stuff like from comp. But because the valve covers, for example, they're a pretty low profile valve cover, and it takes on the valve train standard big block Chevy stuff, but you've got to have the shorter poly lock to fit below the stock valve cover. And the A1 has a LS style ignition coil on it. Yeah. So you can't just swap to a traditional big block Chevy valve cover, for example. So Raylar has some special little poly locks on there that they're milled down. They're a little bit shorter. The screw-in rocker studs, stuff like that. There's just a lot of little things where he makes it pretty simple to just you click the thing, you buy it, and you bolt it in rather than having to mess around with trying to figure out what'll work and what won't work and maybe having to modify stuff.
Exactly. We got some guesses over here. We're saying 430 to 480 at the wheels. Somebody saying 540 and 636. I like that number. 636
I like that number too.
would be a good torque number to see out there. So, on top of Ugly Truck, you're getting ready to start doing some work on the, what do you call it? The Burbalanche?
The Suburbalanche.
Suburbalanche.
Suburbalanche. That's kind of a crazy idea I've had for a long time. So I want to we got a 99 K2500 Suburban. I've done a few odds and ends on the channel with it. It's powered by a big block 7.4 Vortec, the 454.
Right.
And I want to chop the back end of it off, and either it's going to look awful and hideous, or maybe it'll actually look how I hope it's going to look. But actually, the next thing I'm going to start on that is that's the Vortec. It has the black box PCM.
Right.
And, you can tune those, I believe 98 and 99s you can tune.
Yeah, the last 2 years, I believe.
Yep. And then, but that being said, the processors are pretty slow. The computers have some problems in terms of, I think there's a range limit on whether it's the mass air meter or a couple other odds and ends. So yeah, we'll do a 0411 swap where we put the LS style PCM in there.
Right. There's
a couple people out there that make the diagrams, so you can just basically repin your stock harness, plug all the little connectors from the black box into the 0411 PCM, use a Chevy Express operating system to flash it on there, and hopefully you should be good to go. And then you can do, I'm not totally up on all the tuning stuff, but I think there's some operating systems you could put on there for forced induction or flex fuel or, all kinds of cool above and beyond stuff.
Definitely, yeah. You've got some custom OSs that you can run to go above 1 bar for whenever you're on supercharged or turbocharged. And the flex fuel stuff could be a little bit tricky on finding a segment swap on there, but the information's out there, and we can definitely help you out if you run into any hiccups on that side of the road. And speaking of tuning, we noticed you've been tuning heavy truck yourself. Have you ran into any issues going through that process? How's it gone for you so far?
Okay, so I'm not like I've said this a lot in my videos. I'm not a professional tuner. I've read a lot, I've studied a lot, and I'm confident enough to try it on my own stuff. I definitely wouldn't want to tune anybody else's vehicles, but so far it's been pretty straightforward and pretty smooth. I'm kind of meticulous. I don't make crazy changes and just kind of, let it rip and see what happens. I'm change one small thing, measure it, take the data log. I spent a lot of time setting up my logger. I've got the wideband error on there. That was one of the most important ones because I am running a 3-bar speed density operating system. So we don't have a mass air meter. So I spent a lot of time just getting that dialed in. The one problem I am having, which I kind of expected, is on the spark tables running on the very bottom row because I've maxed out my grams per cylinder.
Right.
So I probably need to go in and scale the tune, which is, from what I've read and understand, is kind of a pain in the butt. It takes a lot of extra work moving stuff around. But right now it's not a huge deal because on only 8 pounds of boost, I wind up in the bottom row, which is like 1.5 grams per cylinder. I wind up there at like 2 pounds. So and I'm not running a lot of timing anyway. So
right.
For now, I'm just going to be happy running in that bottom row of the timing table. But probably when I pull the motor apart to build it, when I put it back together, that's when I'm going to go, rescale the tune and then try to make everything so I can progressively, pull a little bit of timing out as the boost increases. Because hopefully, I've told people my goal is I want to make 1,000 horse on that thing whenever I build the motor. So I'll definitely have to tweak that a little bit. Other than that, I've got a few little drivability things like the decel fuel cutoff. When I let off on the throttle, it goes way rich for a second, and I've got all the injector data in there. It's got some FIC 1000cc injectors, and they provide all the data for that thing. But there's probably some other parameter that I need to mess around with. Someone told me in the transient there's like a minimum fuel milligrams or something like that. So just little stuff like that I'm still trying to tweak. But in terms of just overall tuning, it pretty quickly went, from the stock tune that I had in there to running and driving under boost. And also because, the 8.1 is stock, I haven't changed the camshaft, stock intake manifold, stock cylinder heads. So all those things basically haven't tweaked the VE tables a whole lot. So overall pretty smooth, I'd have to say.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever you start in a situation like that where you're not messing with the lower end of the VE table, it makes life a lot easier because you're not fighting a bunch of the idle stuff. And you're right on the transient that minimum fuel. It has a double-edged sword kind of approach to it where it can help on that side, but it's also good if you start to see lean tip in. That would be where you would adjust it there to make sure that you're not getting that instantaneous lean spike. So you can lower that down a little bit and try and find that balance in between the two. Uh, but honestly, more concerned about the tip inside of it. We don't care if we go a little bit rich whenever we're going off a DFCO because we're in a no load situation. It can just make some noise and burbles and stuff like that. Some guys like those. I'm looking at you, chat room. So. And speaking of which, you're now doing Tolman Performance Engineering. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, okay. So I've always kind of worked in cars. I've always worked in shops, and some of those shops we make shows and video content out of. But it's kind of been a goal of mine for as long as I can remember to someday own my own speed shop. And I guess 2021 is the year that we're going to make that happen. Primarily, I like trucks. I'm a truck guy, so most of the stuff that I build, I'd like to focus on trucks, both gas and diesel. I know in the diesel world, there's a lot of red flags. There's a lot of stuff
there.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that you don't want to get into. So we may avoid some of that later model stuff. But I think in terms of just pickup trucks in general, there's a pretty big market. There's a lot of people who now are turning to trucks instead of cars. Probably for a lot of reasons, whether that's just the lower cost to, say you want to get a mid 2000s vehicle, you're looking at like, LS2 GTO, or maybe looking at a Corvette, or you can buy a, 200,000 mile pickup for next to nothing.
Right.
And then you still get a very similar LS engine that you can work with and you can build and you can do anything to it. So anyway, I'm a truck guy. I like all kinds of trucks, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to open up shop. Hopefully sometime we got kind of a timetable, maybe 4 to 6 months from now, we got to get into a building. Because right now I'm just kind of working out in my own home shop, my home garage. I'm building my own stuff there. But that's basically the plan, 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, street trucks, race trucks, whatever you want to do. I don't paint. I don't do body work. I don't do metal work. I'm awful at it. You wouldn't want me to do that, but any of the other stuff, if it makes it go faster, sound louder, if you need to weld, fabricate, or whatever, that's really what I love doing the most. Is just I'd be happy building exhaust systems all day.
Yeah, exactly. I hear you there, man. So are you going to be out near Salt Lake City then?
Yeah, so right now I live a little bit south of Salt Lake. Actually, my town's called Saratoga Springs, and probably within a 15, 20 mile radius there is where we'll end up getting a shop. There's a lot of commercial and industrial spaces for rent, stuff like that. So that's kind of right where we're at.
Good. Well, and if you guys aren't already following LT, there is a link down in the description over to his YouTube channel. And before we get out of here, I'll have him throw all the other details to Facebook and Instagram and all that jazz. But make sure and go drop him a subscribe over there. That way you can get updated, not only on his new projects, but whenever he gets the shop up and running. I'll be anxious to follow some of you. I take it you're going to document some customer builds?
Yeah, absolutely. The channel that I'm doing right now, my own YouTube channel, I've built my own stuff on there. But the plan is just to continue to document. And one of my sayings is I show you guys every step along the way. And I'm going to continue to do that, whether that's my own truck or somebody else's truck that we're working on. And even the process of, finding the shop and finding the space and moving in, or if we have to possibly renovate or whatever. I'm going to continue to show everything along the way, continue to show the builds, customer builds, and hopefully if things go how I hope they will, I'll be able to be picky enough where I can, just kind of pick and choose and do some really cool, really fun builds and, not be doing brake jobs all day.
Yeah, I hear you there, man. I've got a brake bleed downstairs that I got to get done here soon. Chat room, listen up. We will be doing the drawing for the HP Tuners MPVI2 here probably in about 10 minutes. You're going to have to be present to win. In the meantime, though, if anybody's got any questions for LT, by all means, hit up the chat. I'll relay it over to the guy. And because I know some of you are going to have some questions about what's going on. So outside of Ugly Truck and the Suburban Lanch, what about what Sierra do you have? I know you got the diesel Sierra, right?
Yeah, I've got it's a 2020 AT4 HD. So it's the L5P Duramax. It's got the 10-speed Allison. I haven't done a whole lot to that truck, and as much as I hate to say it, I probably won't do a whole lot to it. The thing tows wonderfully. It's amazing. The 10-speed was new this year for 2020, and I've had a couple other Duramaxes, and the 6-speed Allisons were pretty good transmissions, but the 10-speed for towing, it's like it just has a mind of its own. It's always in the right gear. It always knows when it needs to knock down a gear. If you're going up a grade. Out west here, we do have some pretty steep passes, and it seems like it just always works. I do have one of those, the Banks Derringer on there. If you guys know the diesel world, the L5Ps, you can tune them. It took guys a couple of years to actually, jailbreak or hack the computers to be able to even, reflash them. But even now, the cost to do so is in the couple $1,000 by the time you get the PCM, you get the credits you need, find somebody to write the tunes for you. And then, that's just if you're doing a tune only. If you want to do hard parts and, get rid of some of that EPA related stuff, that's obviously expenses on top of that.
Right.
So for, the Banks Derringer, it's an inline module. It adjusts rail pressure. I think it adjusts boost pressure a little bit as well.
Okay.
And just for doing those two things, it makes, I think on the 2020s, it gives another 75 or 80 horse, I think 130, 40 pounds of torque, if I'm not mistaken.
That's cool. I'm going to have to check that out.
It's a nice in-between solution. So instead of spending $4,000 to tune it, you spend $800. Banks, they're totally about, fail safes and, safe EGTs. And if it detects transmission slip, it pulls power back. And if it detects EGTs over a certain threshold, it pulls power back. So, for a truck that's still under warranty, I was totally happy to go that route. Other than that, on the truck, I've done a small leveling kit. It's got some 35s on it, ridge grapplers, bronze wheels on it. I made like a little intake tube to go between the filter box and the turbo inlet, just to kind of get rid of the silencer so you can hear the turbo a little bit more. But other than that, I drive the thing and try to keep it clean because it's a black truck and it is dusty out here. So that's a full-time job just by itself, keeping the thing clean.
I'm so tired of black cars, and yet that seems to be all I ever buy, and I don't know why. It's just an absolute uphill battle. Every scratch shows, and it's just I've got circles on the hood of the Subaru from where I dabbled with doing paintless dent repair on the hood 2 years ago, and I've just never cleaned them off. And now every time I take it out to the drag strip, people are like, what's going on with the circles out there? And I was like, it's not as interesting as you think it is. I literally just got too lazy about doing PDR on there. So I know that you did a video on this talking about kind of how you got into cars, but I think that your background kind of aligns with mine. You want to kind of give some of your background out there for the guys that maybe don't know where you came up from.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in the state of Maine, way up in the Northeast where cars rust out and it snows a lot. I love the snow, but I hate the rust. So my dad was always kind of like, the old school muscle car, hot rodder kind of guy. And that's really where I got first introduced to anything mechanical or automotive. I remember going over to his shop. He had an old 70 Nova SS that he had, a big black car. And I just remember like one day, one of my first memories of like anything car related, he had open headers on it and started it up. When I was, 5, 6, 7 years old, I remember going in there and covering my ears because it was so loud. But I was also like, okay, this is cool. This is awesome. I definitely need to learn more about it. So that's kind of, I guess, where I got the bug. And then I just, just growing up kind of as I got older, I'd help him out in the shop a little bit more, help him with his projects. And then it just like, I'm a very like obsessive personality. So if I want to learn more about something, I kind of pour everything into it. So
same way.
I think where I got probably most of my, it sounds weird to say most of my knowledge or most of my information from is, the magazine days. We used to subscribe to Hot Rod, Popular Hot Rodding. And then I also got Truckin' Magazine when that was a thing. I would literally read every word of those magazines cover to cover, front
Dude,
to back.
I don't know about you, but I recently just threw away boxes full of them. Just boxes and boxes full of magazines all the way back from the late 90s, early 2000s, stuff like that. And it was hard to part with them because it's just like I could always go back and look up old project builds and stuff like that and pull up a lot of interesting information and stuff.
I wish I still had them, to be honest, because a lot of times some particular article will come to mind where I remember I read something about whatever it was, like, and I know what this in the magazine somewhere,
Right.
but they take up a lot of space and they're a pain to move. And I've since then moved cross country a couple different times. So yeah, anyway, reading those magazines, that's kind of where I got my start, and I started learning a whole lot more. In high school, or actually middle school, I bought my first project vehicle. That was a 76 C10.
Nice.
And mentioned, the state of Maine and rust. So if you're a young guy and you want to get into a cool vehicle, most young kids can't afford, a Camaro, a Mustang, a Challenger, a cool muscle car, especially up there, because everything is rotted out, and anything that's worth anything is, going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Right.
So this was 2001. Actually, it's kind of weird. It was the day before 9/11 happened. So it was September 10th, 01. I bought my first truck. It was the 76 C10. I paid $300 for it. I had raked blueberries all summer. That was like my first job. And I saved up enough money to buy the truck. And that was kind of, I guess the next point where it continued on. It was a little bit rusty, so I had to, learn a little bit of body work, replace some fenders. I'm not good at it. I still don't like doing body work, but the next thing I did was a big block swap. I put I looked at the regular 454s. My grandfather had an old dump truck with a 427 tall deck in it.
Okay.
The old industrial motors.
Yeah.
And I originally was going to throw that in, but then when I took it to the machine shop to have it done, and the block was cracked. So I was like, oh man, we can't do that. And I looked around, and some of the other traditional, 396, 427, 454 big block stuff, it was just it was hard to find. It was expensive. So I did the next best thing, and I got the Uncle Henry's. That was kind of like the classified magazine that we had. Every Thursday you bought the Uncle Henry's. Right. So I looked just for different old cars, and I found a 1970 Cadillac convertible DeVille. And so that had a 472 in it. And in the 1970 year, those were rated at, I believe, 375 horse and 525 torque. And the guy supposedly had just redone the motor, and the car had rusted out. And it was a convertible, and when you open the doors, literally the whole car would like
bend in the middle.
Yeah. So I don't remember what I paid for the car, but I got a pretty good deal on it, maybe $800 or $1,000 or something like that. It had the engine, the 472. It had the long tail turbo 400, and I transplanted it into the C10. And then I got into some trouble with it and might have gone off the road a time or two, but that's kind of how you learn. Is you make a mistake and you're like, all right, well, maybe I don't need to do that again. But that's kind of where I got my love for big blocks, I think, is that very first engine swap. From there, I ended up selling the truck like my freshman year in college, because I moved out west to go to school. I went originally I went to school for mechanical engineering. I switched to business management, supply chain, minoring in mechanical engineering. And while I was out west, I actually got a job as just like a mechanic, kind of helping out at a transportation company. And I told some of the story in my other video, but basically me and the guy that owned that company, we started Redshift, and that's it's a little speed shop that's in Southeast Idaho. That's where I went just the other day to dyno the ugly truck. I worked there for a couple of years. And then I had always watched Power Nation, as it's called now, on Spike TV. First thing, you get up early Saturday morning, early Sunday morning, you watch all those shows. And they had a commercial on there saying basically, hey, we're looking for some more help. My wife told me to make a video, a little audition tape, and I was like, there's no way they're going to pick me. But I made the tape, and it was a little bit of a back and forth process because, I must have looked terrified or confused or something on the first one. And then I did a second one. They're like, well, we can't hear you, so do another one. And then, so I had to make 3 videos, but ultimately for some reason, they chose me. So we moved cross country from Idaho to Tennessee. We spent 5 years in a little bit south of Nashville, It was a blast to be able to host Truck Tech, and it was awesome. We got to have access to some amazing tools and products and cars, and we built some fun stuff. And then 5 years later, we just decided, you know what, it's time to branch out on our own and open up shop for ourselves, and kind of that's where we're at now.
Man, that's awesome, and that's quite the facility that they have out there in Nashville. But as you said, great exposure, and to kind of parlay that over into YouTube is a natural fit for you, and you're already just kind of hitting it like gangbusters. It's awesome to see you grow the channel and get good new content out there, and being able to control your content yourself makes a big difference at the same time. So I'm sure there will be a lot of people besides me that'll be interested to follow along with future builds and things like that. So let me see if I got any questions over here. I launched the raffle in the middle of that, and so I got a lot of people just spamming for raffle stuff.
So you're giving away the HP Tuners MPVI, is that right?
Yep. HP Tuners signed on as a sponsor of the channel this year. I want to give a big shout out to them as always, which is interesting given I'm not platform specific part, in particular, but they like the information that we're putting out there, and so we decided that we'd kind of try and work together and get some of that. And so they said that they would throw one out here, and I figured what better night than on our 40,000 celebration whenever we got LT visiting in with us. And so now Redshift out there in Idaho, they were import based mainly, a lot of Evos and stuff.
A little bit of everything, actually. Okay. We bought an all-wheel drive dyno based on the fact that there were a fair amount of Subarus and Evos and stuff like that out there. But it's kind of like a 50-50 split. We did a lot of domestic stuff, older muscle cars, Mustangs, Camaros. That was kind of like the bread and butter for a while. Right. We did a couple Subaru builds. We did probably couple of my favorite builds we did there. I can't remember what year. It was like a 97. It was a Skyline GTS, I think. Nice. So it was the two-wheel drive Skyline, right. But we had swapped in the RB26, which I guess only came in the GTRs, which were the all-wheel drive Skylines. So it was a two-wheel drive GTR, basically. We did a full build on it, single turbo. We got rid of the individual throttle bodies. The guy wanted to go with a single throttle body on it. Stock displacement is still 2.6 liters. Those are really kind of cool. It's a tiny inline six. The pistons are just itty bitty, but they're silky smooth. They rev to the moon, and it's kind of fun driving the car when you're sitting on the wrong side of the road.
We got a guy with a R32 with an LS swap in it that we're working on right now. Kind of an interesting bastardization of, probably get as much hate as the RX-7 guys get whenever they do the LS swaps.
Well, probably a little bit more because the Skylines, that's kind of like the holy grail car, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I dig anything that's kind of like not meant to be. You mash something up, and yeah, the LS swap is like king right now. Everybody's LS swapping stuff, but I like to see them in just odd different platforms. And especially if you can keep the all-wheel drive working, like whether you got a Trailblazer, all-wheel drive front set up in there, that'd be pretty cool.
Seriously. Socrates asks, what are the limits on the stock 8.1 internals, and how far are you willing to take them?
Well, how far am I willing to take this one? I'd like to keep the pistons inside the engine if at all possible. And what will they hold up to? It's hard to find a good solid answer to that because number one, not a lot of people use them in automotive applications. There's a lot of them in boats, but the way a boat engine is operated is much different from a car because right. A boat, wide open throttle all day long, you never let up. Where a car, or a truck rather, you're only wide open for a minute or two, 20 seconds maybe. From what I read and from what I hear, the stock pistons will let go somewhere in the mid 500 horse range. Obviously, say you have a little bit of detonation, then there's, lower the power number. Some people say they've pushed them a little bit further, and also some people have said they've had failures at a stock power level. Best I can tell, mid 500s though is kind of where they're where they're comfortable at. I've had a lot of people ask me we talked a little bit earlier about gapping the rings, open up the ring gap and see what they'll hold, because part of the theory is the rings will butt together and that'll cause an early piston failure, which in theory, I guess, is true. But that being said, I think the pistons are still pretty weak.
Right.
Beyond the pistons, the next threshold is the stock connecting rods. Apparently somewhere in the mid 650 range, the connecting rods will go, and the crankshaft a little bit more than that. But again, there's not a ton of info out there on the A1s, just because not many people are doing it.
A lot of assumptions out there. Have you thought about methanol injection yet?
Yes and no. I like the theory of meth injection, but I had an engine we did a while ago with a methanol injection kit on it. Had some problems where the solenoid stuck open and basically trashed the motor because it hydrolocked it. Yeah, meth injection is a great idea. In theory, it'll work great. I know a lot of people use it with really good results. But to me, I hate adding extra systems on, because it's just one more point where there's a potential for something to maybe go wrong.
Oh, you'd hate my truck then. I've got direct port methanol injection, secondary fuel injection off a micro squirt, and then all of it's still being ran off the stock ECU. It is a secondary system nightmare. And in fact, that's what killed the first motor. But it's fun. The methanol injection is one thing that I've been, obviously, as I said, I was in the Subaru world for a while, and methanol injection was always big back in there. And then coming over specifically on the L83, whenever we first started getting into boost on that, we were running well over 20 PSI on that thing on the stock bottom end and stock ring gap, because of methanol injection being able to control those cylinder combustion temps. And and honestly, what ended up killing that thing was that we had gone over to secondary injection because the direct injection system just couldn't keep up with the power that we were making. And I got into a weird situation on cylinder air mass, reading into a new area on the volumetric efficiency table, and it went lean on the primary system, which would have been fine if I hadn't had the secondary fuel still going in there. So it went, instead of going full lean, it went about half lean, and then it got into just all the detonation, and then the ECU freaked out and threw 36 degrees of timing at it, which, yeah. I was able to drive it onto the trailer, but other than that, she was a full rebuild. Luckily, the block survived, and now we're probably pushing out 26, 27 PSI boost through a F1A through it, so it's fun until I tore the axle out of the back end of it. I converted it over to a 4-link, and it literally ripped it out of the 4-link in the back end whenever we were at the drag strip last time. So it's fun. It's fun stuff. So on Ugly Truck at 8 PSI, what kind of timing did you end up getting up to on that thing? I know you're running a little conservative, but I'd be anxious to hear, kind of what AFRs you were seeing on the dyno pool and what kind of timing that you were getting into.
Yeah, so on my commanded air fuels were like 11.3, and because we had raised the boost a little bit from 5 to 8, I hadn't got a chance to mess around tweaking the VE tables through there, but it was a little rich. It was like 10.2, 10.3. Since then, actually, just this morning, I flashed a new update in there just to pull a little bit of fuel back out of it.
Okay.
But so about, mid 10.5s is where it was. 10.2 was the richest on the dyno. And timing, I went up to like 12, 13 degrees, but that was it. And it didn't honestly pick up a whole lot more horsepower for timing. So again, I was just like, I'd much rather be safe. I'd much rather make this thing last. And even only on like, 11 degrees of timing, it was making a lot of torque. So I was like, I'm happy with it. I didn't want to push it. And maybe when if I say get a spare 8.1 and I'll build that and have it ready to go, maybe I'll kind of just start cranking up things just to see how far it will hold up before it actually lets go. But for now, I'm like way ultra conservative, and I'm happy, happy with it.
Good. And I said, I'll be anxious to see kind of the curve, how that turns out, because what size turbo did you end up putting on that thing?
So that's an S480, 80 millimeter compressor on it. It was the 132 AR on the turbine housing, T6 flange. So the reason I chose that I wanted something that would be pretty freely breathing. I didn't want to have a lot of back pressure. I wanted to breathe pretty smoothly. It's an 80 millimeter. It's not ridiculously massive, but it's pretty responsive on that 8.1. It's
Right.
496 cubes. So there's minimal lag. Whenever you roll into it, it's right there. It's ready to go. And I'm not pushing the turbo all the way either. So, the temperature coming out of the compressor is not stupid. I obviously haven't driven it in the middle of summer yet. It's been 30 degrees out here, so the intercooler is doing amazing right now. But
Right.
yeah, S480 T6.
D&Z wants to know if you've done the intake mods on your 8.1 yet.
I have not. I did one of my last videos had some of the PCV stuff on there, but that was just with a throttle body. But yes, at some point, probably when I do build the motor, I'll pull the intake manifold apart. And the 8.1 intake mod is basically, there's a baffle that kind of goes halfway down the plenum, and it restricts the opening from what I understand to about a 55 millimeter passageway.
Interesting.
And so what you do basically, on the 8.1 manifolds, the plenum is on the bottom down in the valley. So you pull the intake off. There's a spot where you can cut the plenum open. You get in there with a saw, grinder, Dremel, whatever you have. You cut out that baffle, and it opens up a pretty big restriction, or it takes away a pretty big restriction. Along the same time, you'll work on the PCV setup, because the PCV is basically just a 1/16 of an inch metal tube that's stuck through the plenum into the valley. You weld that up so you can do an external PCV. And then some guys will actually go a step further and chop off the intake snout and then make that like a true 90 millimeter, because the A1 uses the standard like 5.3 throttle body size. I think it's like, 72, 76 millimeters, somewhere in there.
Right.
And so the casting is pretty thin at that spot, but guys will, chop that off and put a little bit bigger opening and run like a true 90 millimeter throttle body. So that's what the 8.1 intake mod's all about. I haven't done it yet, but I will do it at some point, and I'll document it, and I'll show everybody kind of what it takes.
Yeah, I wonder, I'll be anxious to see what kind of horsepower that would pick up on the same boost levels, given, whenever you go into positive displacement or forced induction like that, you tend to see that some of the intake side stuff maybe doesn't net as much horsepower gains as you would see on a naturally aspirated. But it would be interesting to see if it does free up a little more flow, so you're making the same amount of power at maybe a lower boost point on there, which is always kind of the holy grail of forced induction.
Exactly.
Here's a very specific one, and I don't know if you're going to have an opinion on it, but what is your opinion on the Dart and Sleeve 5.3 with the twin 76s?
A Dart and sleeved 5.3 with twin 76s. Sure. I've never sleeved a motor, so I guess I don't have an opinion there. I know Darton is one of the names that is actually, no, I take that back. We did an FA20 with Darton sleeves in it, but I don't have a huge opinion. I know the 5.3 stuff, you can make a lot of power on a stock block. So I guess if you're after a really, really big number, 1,000, 1,500 plus, it might make sense to sleeve a block. Twin 76s, that's a lot of turbo, that's a lot of airflow. So it sounds like a pretty serious combination.
I'm so out of touch on the turbo stuff. But I've always been kind of interested in the sleeving aspect of taking the smaller bore stuff, throwing a real hard sleeve in there, and then putting all the boost through it. But then you have to get into O-ring in the heads and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, and if you're going that far, you might as well go to like an LSX block, because it has those extra head bolts on there.
Right.
So I don't know if the question was intending, sleeving a stock block or sleeving like, say, an LSX style of block. People do all kinds of crazy stuff all the time, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll have to meet up sometime. You can race your big block versus my big block whenever I finally get the thing running, which I'm going to, people. I can hear you rolling your eyes in the chat room. We'll be starting it in the next couple days, I promise.
I'm down for an acceleration contest.
Let's see what else we got. We got Brandon Jones wanting to know how you feel about the Chinese eBay, Amazon 3-bar map sensors. Listen, man, if it works, it works. A lot of those things are going to be manufactured in the same facilities, just with different stickers on them. But don't be surprised if the reliability on it is a little bit crappy. But you get what you pay for. I run IAT sensors. I run the Chinese ones because I burn through them so fast, run methanol injection. And, you know, if I get 6 months out of it, I'm happy. I just know going into it that I'm going to end up losing one.
So here's a question on map sensors, because I ran into this. I had bought one from one of those Chinese eBay, you know, outfits, and I noticed that they had provided the offset and the linear values to enter in. But one thing I noticed is a couple different sensors had different values for those to put in. Like if you're getting, say, a true GM, I think I saw the values were off by, I think it was maybe like 5 or 10 kPa. So maybe that's something at least to keep an eye on is, you know, whenever you're going from sensor to sensor, make sure you have your good calibration data to make sure it's actually reading what it's supposed to.
You know, and that's the truth. I'm dealing with a Holley 1-bar right now, and Holley provides you the 0 to 103 kPa is what it maxes out at, and that's the 0.5 to 4.5 volt range. And so theoretically, you can go in there and say you got a 4-volt span between 0 and 103, and if you apply that in there to get your linear and offset, which are equivalent to your 5-volt and your 0 volts in HP tuners, it should match up, but it still falls off, and it becomes a pain where you're trying to track down atmospheric voltages and move the linear scale based off of that. And it's nice whenever people provide that data. You know, surprisingly though, finding stuff like that, Holley data is just not available out there. The Google machine, you know, you search on that, you might be able to find the 3-bar stuff like that, but finding just like a 1-bar, of course, not very many people are going to be running a 1-bar Holley sensor because you could get away with a factory one. So, what do you think about the eBay plug wires for the 8.1? What are you running on yours?
I am
ceramic
running
ones, I will say, is what he was asking about.
ceramic. Okay. I don't know about the eBay ceramic ones. I guess I've run. I think Excel has those ceramic ones. I've run those not on Ugly Truck, but on a couple different vehicles. And I love the idea of the ceramic coating because you can basically, like, if you've got a header that's really tight, you know, you can almost have it touching the header and not burn through. On Ugly Truck, I'm actually running just the junkyard plug wires that came with it. And when I designed the manifold on the passenger side, I was able to leave enough room where it's, you know, all the hot parts are a long ways away from the plug wires. So stock coils now, I had some red coils on there for a while, but it's got stock coils on it now, and then stock plug wires and just TR6 plugs with a factory gap, which is like 35 thousandths. I
tell you, plug wires are one of my most hated things. Building plug wires, it seems like it's just and for one of it is I've had, I don't know, I think they're the Holley branded LS custom kit, even though it's Excel and all those guys are, you know, looped into the same manufacturing house there. And just no crimpers have ever gotten those good. Excels, I've not had any issues with those, and I don't know why. It's just the actual metal part that you're crimping on for the terminal is designed differently, and it doesn't wrap around properly, and so the plastic tip that goes on there for the side that goes into the coil just never seems to seat right. Let's see.
Yeah, plug wires. Anytime you can get an off-the-shelf set that work, that's a lot easier, but that's not always an option.
Oh, mercy. Sorry, I'm digging through some of this. There's a lot of random stuff in here. Josh Smith, I'm building a 598 big block. I've got plenty of videos out there if you want to go over there. It's done. It's in the car. It's wired up. I just got to finish the exhaust, and then we're firing it up. Getting into, I've got 2 1/8 inch primaries down to 3.5 inch collectors, and it's they're getting into the bottom of the floor, so I'm switching over to a tranny mount that's a little bit lower to kind of tip them down a little bit. Should I hot side pipe beneath the radiator or go underneath? What's your thought on that?
Beneath the radiator or where?
Underneath. Hot side underneath or beneath the between the radiator or underneath?
Oh, I got you. I would go underneath if possible. I'm guessing that's for like a flipped truck manifold type
Yep.
deal. If it were me, I don't like pipes going, especially exhaust pipes going between the radiator and the engine. But, that being said, you also have, I don't know what vehicle the question was about in particular, but you also have to work around your chassis and your constraints and, stuff like that. Um,
What did you do on your? Did you do a manifold flip on the ugly truck?
So what I did is the stock manifolds on the driver's side, just like is on a lot of, like the LS single turbo stuff. So stock manifold driver's side. I took another driver's side manifold, flipped it around frontwards, chopped the end off, and then I made from 2.5-inch Schedule 40 steel pipe, I made a merge that goes up into a 3-inch Schedule 40 pipe, and that goes into the T6 flange. So I have a single crossover that runs kind of up along the frame rail, and then it merges right below the Y. And if that's probably a little bit confusing, but I got a million videos on the process of building the manifold. So basically, the both manifolds are stock, where the primaries run into it's not a collector, I don't know what they call it. It's not a log, but it's a stock manifold on both sides, so it's kind of balanced,
Right.
in that sense. And then there's just the merge right before the turbo, and it sits in the same spot where a lot of single turbo LS stuff does, just kind of on the front of the passenger side cylinder head.
Cool. I'm gonna have to go back and check that out. Well, we're kind of getting to that point in time where we're going to go ahead and wrap up. And so I want to go ahead and take a real big moment to thank Lawrence LT Tolman, LT, as you guys know him, for taking his time, stopping by. Listen, as I said, there is a link to his YouTube down in the description of this video. I'm going to give him a couple minutes here to wrap up, plug anything that he wants to plug. But everybody, show him some love. Thank him for stopping by the garage and spending his Thursday night with us.
Yeah, so I mean, YouTube, that's kind of where I'm spending most of my efforts right now. Click on the link, hit subscribe, help me out. I always appreciate that. I've got a little bit of stuff on the Facebook page. Everything's kind of just Lawrence LT Tolman or LT Tolman. I try to put some videos on Facebook that are kind of a little bit more not so technical. I try to do a little bit of vlog style stuff over there. Instagram, always, give us a follow over there. That's just kind of snapshots and pictures, occasionally some behind the scenes stuff that doesn't make it into the videos. But that's pretty much it. We're trying to get a t-shirt and a merch thing up and going here, but nothing's live yet. But if you subscribe to the channel, if you are interested in what's going on there, we'll keep everybody updated whenever that launches.
Excellent.
But I appreciate everybody watching. I appreciate you having me on the show. Yeah, just so real grateful and thankful for the opportunity.
Well, we're definitely going to want to have you back. We'll give you some time to get some more projects out there. That's the way we can pick your brain. And I apologize to everybody. This is a little bit short notice. We kind of threw this together, and I emailed LT. I'd seen him in the comments a time or two, and I said, you know what? This guy's got a great head on his shoulder. He's perfect for the automotive YouTube community. He's not out here doing silly stuff. He's actually getting down to the meat and potatoes of different projects, walking you through stuff, and that's the kind of information that I know I dig into, and the majority of the subscribers on our channel are interested in seeing behind the scenes how you actually go through the process of doing all this stuff. And so there can't be enough of that kind of good information out there. So we appreciate you having you as a part of the community, and as I said, taking the time out of your day, coming and joining us, and hopefully everybody here in the chat room and everybody that watches this video after the fact goes over, drops LT a follow, check out some of his videos, throw some likes out there, and let's welcome him to the YouTube tuning community, because I'll be interested to follow you and see you as you get Ugly Truck dyno tuned and throw more power and start doing a forged bottom end on it, and who knows what other crazy stuff. And maybe instead of the Nova, I'll have to break out the Subaru and drag it down your way, and we can go truck to truck.
I like it. We'll meet somewhere in the middle, find a spot, and let it rip.
Sweet. We're gonna try and hit up some events this year. So keep me posted if you get out and about to any of the LS Fest or any of the drag week stuff, things like that, and maybe we can meet up.
Definitely will do.
Okay, well, I'm going to pop back over to the webcam screen real quick and let's see here. It is time to pick the winner of our HP Tuners MPVI2 and big money, no whammies. Dustin Holmes, are you still in the chat room? You are our winner. Dustin Holmes. Speak now, forever hold your peace. You got a couple seconds here. I gotta give the lag enough time for everything to catch up. Oh, bingo. Dustin Holmes, shoot me an email over on the website, goatropegarage.com. You guys know the drill. Thanks for stopping by the garage. Remember, ABT, always be tuning.